Yep, you know who it is, DJ Scream A. To everybody out there tuned in right now, I want to introduce a brother by the name of Dr.Dan. I'm about to have a good conversation with. Now, Dr. Dan, go ahead and let everybody know, what I'm saying, who you are and where we're going to try to head during this conversation.
Bet. So I'm Dr. Dan. I'm an emergency physician by trade, a health communicator. So you catch me on all them channels, CNN, MSNBC, whatever, cheddar. And I also have a background in biodefense. I was an Obama administration biodefense appointee. So all this stuff about H1N1, flu, all that stuff, that was all my lane. That's pretty much it. In military vet and a hip hop head. That's about it.
Okay, now we're definitely going to dive into that. So I know that one of the main things, pretty much the main thing in this conversation is talking about the COVID-19 pandemic and the current state that we're in, with variants coming along, and also something that's very strong in the African American community and even outside of the African American community, which is the vaccination. So let's start off with COVID-19 or the coronavirus in the year 2020. My first question is going to be, how long typically does historically a pandemic last?
Yeah, good question. So pandemics, they kind of differ. It just depends on how bad the virus is and what area it spreads and all those type of things. So it depends on a lot of factors, but I'll give some examples. So we had H1N1, right? The 2009 H1N1 pandemic. And that was for about a year and a half, almost 2 years, and pretty much rolled through and we got over it, died out, right? There were people who died. There were people who got sick. We had the 2003 SARS, which happened in China. And that actually affected the population quickly. It was more aggressive. People were having lung disease, pneumonia, and dying, and things like that. And then it burned through the area, but then spread outside of the area significantly because it was contained and they did what they need to do, and it was a wrap. Same thing with MERS, which is Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome. That was seen in another coronavirus family. That was seen in the Middle East, in UAE, Abu Dhabi, Kuwait. You hear all these places where they had camel. And that also died out. So it just depends on how it's contained. Ebola, on the other hand, it'll go away, it'll come back, it'll go away, come back. So it's kind of picking between how virulent or how bad it is.
So and this honestly comes from conservatives. They would say, let's just call them let's not say conservatives. Why, when there was H1N1, were there no shutdowns? Why, when there was MERS and SARS, were there no shutdowns? Why were we not encouraged to wear masks domestically here in the United States when there was H1N1, which was also deadly, not as deadly as COVID, but which was also deadly? Like, why COVID-19? I guess what happened medically through research and science for them to say, hey, this is nothing to play with, and we need to shut the world down?
Yeah, so good question. I mean, we still figuring it out. Let me not sit up here in front like I know it all. The COVID has kept us all humble, and these pandemics do keep us all humble. So yours truly, if I don't know, I'm gonna say I don't know. There are a lot of factors, depending on how, again, I talked about how virulent this is or how bad it is, meaning how aggressive. Does it cause disease that kills people? Is it something we can manage and we can get a vaccine out to help reduce the spread? We were able to get a vaccine out during the 2009 H1N1 in a good enough time. We did all the measures we needed to do, and we got through to the population to get that message out, and it wasn't as bad as it could have been. And that's just because of the nature of that virus. There are some viruses that get what we call more fit. You ever heard the statement, survival of the fittest? Well, if it's more fit, that means it's really got that factor, that X factor that makes me kind of like bob and weave and be able to spread throughout the population really good. So that's what we are trying to guide against. And this one is doing a lot of things. It spreads faster, it's quicker, it's causing like a silent killer in a sense, because by the time you already it spread, you didn't know you had symptoms, and then a good number, 50% of the population didn't know they had symptoms. With H1N1, you knew you had flu-like symptoms. You went to go get tested.
Asymptomatic, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that has a factor with it, that plays a role in it, and just the nature of this virus. And we're learning it. It's novel, it's new, and it's just we ain't seen nothing like it before. We've seen some things, maybe the cousins, but it's still not the real deal of what we're seeing right now.
So there's so many, the internet, man, and social media, information travels just as fast as this COVID virus travels. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. When you hear things like it, okay, so let me break it down. I'm gonna be honest. When I got COVID last year, or were tested positive for the coronavirus, however you want to take it, I'm not gonna lie, like when I was sitting there, I was like, this don't feel right. Like I've had flus, I've had colds, I've had sinus infections, I've had migraines, I've had, you have your ailments from time to time. But this don't, like, I can't taste properly. My nose is on fire. Thank God I didn't have the respiratory symptoms. You know what I'm saying? 1 minute I would feel fine, like, yeah, this is not even that serious. The next minute I'll feel like my fatigue level, like my energy level was on 10 out of 100. I slept for hours and hours and hours and hours. I say all that just to say, we want to put to the side misinformation and everything, but for the people that feel like this is a man-made virus, and that's probably why we're having so much difficulty with it, what would you say?
I mean, that's cap. I'm gonna say that straight up. Okay, it's not man-made based on the data that we've seen. Now, the question is that man-made is a whole can of worms, and it's a debate that's going back and forth. We'll really know years later, because where it came from, they weren't really transparent, real talk, about the whole how it went down. So when you talk about man-made, there's a man-made, was it made in the laboratory man-made, or were you saying man-made as in the man error,
right?
As in human error, that could have led to a leak? That's a different story. So people have to really get those words right, because it becomes semantics. You're saying something. But if you're saying they fixed this up and it's like a man-made, when we think of man-made, we think of terrorism. We think of like, somebody cooked this up in the lab and then let it loose. That's not what we believe really happened.
So there is, and when people start doing their detective work,
their own research
lab in Wuhan.
I get on that statement. Their own research.
There's a research lab in Wuhan. It originated in Wuhan.
Correct.
I don't know how true it is about the bats and this and that and the third in Wuhan. When you want to get ahead of a pandemic, or you want to get ahead of a virus, if I'm not mistaken, the medical professionals will go study viruses in animals and so forth, right? So sure. I think that's where part of it comes from. And, the lab leak theory, the fact that China wasn't really all the way transparent. I mean, you could kind of see where people are coming from. Right?
Definitely. And I'm in that camp too. Like, okay, you got to be transparent. If we can't see what's going on, we don't know.
Right.
So it makes you wonder, it makes you ask the question, okay? But the theory is typically these are viruses that jump from animal to animal, and they're usually some vectors. For example, with malaria, it's a mosquito that transports this from a certain animal and then puts it in a human being, right? So those are the types of things that we see, what we call the emerging infectious diseases. So when you hear all that fancy word, that's what it is. So it basically jumps from an animal into us. But how did it get there? That's the question. And were we in close contact? Is that related to the environment? We invading their spots. We eating their bush meat or the bat meat and things like that? Are we getting closer to their area? We're constructing and building things in their area. We're invading their territory. Is it related to the environment? There's so many different questions we don't really know. But what we do know is they weren't being transparent, and there was research being done. Did it leak from the lab? I can't really tell you. I can't say it with my chest.
We probably will never know. I feel like, we'll always never say never, but I feel like we'll never know. It's just unfortunate we've lost a lot of lives. It's also unfortunate that I think it's been so politicized. You know what I'm saying? As a person who watched my wife be on the front lines and fight at Emory Hospital, the pandemic. For someone to tell me it's fake, it's just kind of like I take it a little. I'm gonna get a little touchy with it. I guess it's kind of like we saw the frontline workers and yourself, and everybody worked so hard to try to just get it contained last year, and for everybody to kind of just say, I won't even put on a mask. I won't even, some people don't wash their hands. You should wash.
That's because these people are dirty. Let's just call that. They
right. That's
dirty.
what I'm saying. Like everybody has their own different upbringing. Bless them.
Right.
But I think that is just unfortunate, and basically where we are, fast forwarding to almost fall 2021. I think that a lot of people, they chose the day when they said that this pandemic is over. I'm done with this.
Right.
I don't have time for this. I got to go do what I got to do. And mind you, sitting in the house last year, 2020, longer than a lot of us wanted to, definitely wasn't the most comfortable feeling. You want to socialize and, you want to be around your loved ones for sure. But where we're at now is basically 2021, I guess you could say about not comfortably, but what are we, 18 months into the pandemic?
Pretty much, yes.
The vaccination. So you have people from different parts of life saying, I'm not getting vaccinated, don't trust the government. Bill Gates created this because he did a speech and said there's too many people, we're too populated, and Bill Gates has a bunch of money in this, and they research vaccines, and they're taking vaccines to Africa. And what about the vaccines that have mercury in them that hurt little kids? What about the Tuskegee experiment? So forth, so forth, so forth, so forth. So as a medical professional that wants to urge people to get vaccinated for COVID-19, and given some of the prior statements that I just said, how would you respond to some of those? Because some of them are extreme, but some of them, people have a point. There was Tuskegee. There was mercury in vaccines. There are documented cases, albeit probably a minimal, of people not surviving vaccinations, dying from them, right? So what would you say to all these people?
So I'd say first, it's important for us to recognize that it is fact that the U.S. government, the medical industry, has screwed people over in the past. Let's just call it what it is, acknowledge it. That's the first thing. It hasn't been forthright and forthcoming with some of those things, which have added to the burden that we have to actually go through in terms of trying to do something. I'd educate people and say, I'd ask them, do you know what Tuskegee is? And I first really listen to people. Where are they? Because you got to know everybody's why. Everybody's why is different. It's not just about race. It's not all about Tuskegee. It's a whole bunch of different things. Some people are just scared of needles. I've been in the streets. I've had these conversations, multiple different platforms. And I got all the 20 best hitters, all the conspiracy theories and all that stuff. But I usually find out their why. Why or why not? Really, why do you want to take the vaccine? Why don't you want to take the vaccine? Listen to people. We have to take time sometimes to listen and speak with impact. So you take time to listen, to process where people are coming from, and then speak for impact and education. So this is where the education comes in. And I say, hey, this is your concern, Tuskegee. Tell me what you know about Tuskegee. A good number of people don't even know what it is. All they know is that there was an experiment that was done on Black people. That's it. That's literally what they know. But it's actually the opposite of what's happening now. In that case, there was a withholding of treatment They told you were getting the treatment, but you didn't get the treatment. This time, they're telling you take the treatment, and you're saying, well, what about Tuskegee? Well, they really aren't necessarily as related, but they are related in the sense that there's a thought process that's related to mistrust, right? So those are some things in Henrietta Lacks, and we can go through all the number of things, but what have we done? Notice you said was. This was in the vaccine, or this was what happened then. Things have changed. We have moved on from those things. That doesn't mean we don't acknowledge what has happened before. We need to then acknowledge that, and then how do we pivot and move forward so that we save our lives? And then we have to educate one another on what the risk of the vaccine. And I don't think that what people are wanting to hear is that there are risks associated with certain things. There's risk with getting the vaccination. There's risk associated with taking Tylenol. There's a risk associated with taking ibuprofen. There's a risk for walking out on the street. So people have to understand that in their context. And there's a risk of having COVID-19, the disease. And there's a risk of just having a positive test, like you had mentioned, which might not mean as much in the short term, but it might mean something longer down the line if they have long COVID. So there are many things. It's not one bucket in which they fit. But if there's anything I would say as a take-home message is, if you get the vaccination, it prevents us from having these viruses turn into different variants that can cause severe disease. And also understand that less than 2% of the population is fully vaccinated, meaning the whole world. So there are over 194 other countries that haven't received a full dose of the vaccine, and they're begging for it. And we have it on a silver platter here, and we're acting like, nah, I'm not messing with that. But everybody has their choice. I'm not one that's going to say you're wrong. I will point out the information, and I think people then need to make educated decisions. So you're going to take the red pill or the blue pill is what I always say, but you're going to have to make a decision.
What would you say to people, like, if misinformation, as they call it? So I think we have to be realistic about certain things. We were told by the president, albeit he might not agree, if you go get your vaccine and you're fully vaccinated, you can take your mask off and you can pretty much go live your life, right? Sometime later, we understand there's science and there's variants. Here's the Delta variant. Hey, we need to put those masks back on inside because this is what it is. And then there's a lot of people, I'm telling you, around me that were frustrated, like, I went and got the damn vaccine. I'm back to my life. I'm traveling. I got flights. I'm ready to do this and do that. The magic number was 70% of the United States gets vaccinated. Pandemic's pretty much over, or we got it under control, right? We hit the 70%. Here comes the Delta variant. You know what I mean? So as a medical professional, but also putting yourself in the shoes of the average human that wants to live their life, I guess just kind of give us your guidance or your advice, you know what I'm saying? Because that can be kind of frustrating where you're looking to the president, who's a lot different than the prior president, and thinking that this is the president that we can kind of take what he's saying a little more for face value, right? It's a little more stable. But then here you have it. So I guess talk to those people, because I'm just telling you from where I come from the common person is like, this is bullshit, man. I went and got the vaccine and now they're telling me to put my mask back on. You know what I'm saying?
No,
go ahead.
Yeah, it can be frustrating. So I'm gonna say I hear you, I feel you, and I'm one of those doctors in the streets. So I'd be walking in the streets and talking with people. And it's the same thing. I totally hear it. So the question is, what about the message? What have we been telling people? And we got to tell people what we know and what we don't know. And I think we haven't been telling people what we don't know. And we need to be clear about that. And then one of the things with any pandemic, it's what we call a dynamic of change. Pretty much means right now, right here, right now, this is what it looks like. We can take a snapshot photo of this moment, but a couple of minutes from now, a couple hours, days, months from now, this could change. That needed to be clear. So people are used to that. They have the short attention span, that microwave attention span, as one of my colleagues would say. But that's just our society. That's where we're at. All right, I heard this message. This looks fine. This is what we're going to do. And then that's it. Oh, but you just changed up the message. Well, we did that with wine. We tell you, hey, take 1 glass. It's good for your heart.
Mhm.
Take 2 glasses. 6 months later, it's good for your heart. Then a year later, we're like, nah, don't drink any alcohol. It's actually bad for the heart. We just found this. Science is a dynamic change. We're always looking for the truth. We always test hypotheses. What does all that mean in English? Bottom line is the message is changing. Based on this variant ain't here on what we were talking about the past 4 months ago. It's like I'm Delta variant and I'm here to cause havoc and bump what you heard from all the other stuff. I'm the king in town. So the new variant changed the whole game. The plan was if everybody did what they needed to do, by the way, everybody didn't do what they needed to do, and we didn't get to the 70%. And I've always said this whole random 70%, 80%, I think that wasn't going to work because there are some people who aren't going to take the vaccine. Yes, some people may get the infection, but we're still going to be at risk because not everybody is walking in lockstep. Like we all got to be on the same page. We're not all on the same page, it's a wrap. And so SARS-CoV is here for a minute. It's going to be here for a minute because not everybody's taking the vaccine for whatever the reason, and not everybody is on the same page. That's just it.
So even with taking the vaccine, you take your shot 1, you take your shot 2. Now they're talking about boosters. So is this the new norm? People want to take their mask off. Some people are just going to say, screw it, and they're just going to take their mask off because they're tired of the back and forth. But is this the new norm? Should it, if the medical professionals have their way, is this the new flu shot?
Good question. We don't know that fully. That's what I'm going to say, or at least I'm going to say I don't know that fully. I'm not fully convinced. I do think we will need boosters at some point. I was actually on Cheddar and another outlet talking about this and saying I'm not in support of boosters for everybody in general. It's okay for the elderly population, and it is okay for those who are immunocompromised, meaning they have a weakened immune system, maybe you're on chemotherapy, cancer, you got HIV/AIDS, or some kidney liver problem where your immune system just isn't acting right. Under those circumstances, it's probably reasonable to get a booster. It's to protect you. But we also have other alternatives in addition after you've gotten your vaccine. We have other treatments that we can give you. So I think that's something that people have to put in context.
Other treatments such as what?
So there's a thing called a monoclonal antibody, which is basically just like the antibody that you would normally make yourself, but this is actually a synthetically made antibody that actually looks like the antibodies that you would normally get. So they'll give that to you as an infusion, like an IV or in your muscle.
So you're saying that if you're fully vaccinated and you happen to get a severe breakthrough case of COVID, then you can get the
monoclonal antibody. But typically, they would give a booster. If you got a booster shot, you're good. But if you've gotten sick and you've had those symptoms and you fall into the at-risk category, you have other options that you may get in addition. But really, where they want to go for those who are maybe sick or have that immunocompromised state, they might want to get a booster shot. But I don't think it's for the whole population because I actually have not seen the data of vaccinated dying and me putting a tube down their throat in my emergency department room. That's not what's really happening. What I'm seeing is people who are unvaccinated are getting that happen to 90% of the time. So the bottom line is that the vaccines do work. And I don't like the word breakthrough infections, although most of my colleagues are using it. Because if you think of how most vaccines work, there are some vaccines that work that will block the virus from even getting into your body. But most are to train your body's immune system so it knows how to fight. It's like a defense course. So you know a description of the suspect. I know what he got on or what she got on, the SARS-CoV-2, and I know how to fight. So I'm going to be ready for it. I'm going to bring that heat when SARS-CoV show up. And we're going to have to scuffle and then get that done. So when that happens, that's what your body's doing to fight it. But when you think of a force field, which blocks the virus, that's not what the vaccine is supposed to do. So you will be positive if you're exposed to certain people that have the virus. But the question is, do you die? Do you get hospitalized where I put a tube down your throat and put you in the ICU?
So what about the conversation about vaccinated people being asymptomatic and potentially holding higher viral loads. And I say
So,
that
yes.
just to say if you have a higher viral load and you're spreading it to someone who's also vaccinated, that's one thing. And then let's just say you don't have compassion for someone who's not vaccinated. But I think that the little bit of the scary part with that is kids, because kids can't get the vaccine yet, or it hasn't been approved for kids yet. So if you're vaccinated, you go out to work or you go out and you happen to contract COVID and you come home to your family and your kid that's 7 years old that can't get the vaccine, how do we fix that mess? What's the best way to approach that mess?
Yeah, that's not an easy task. Okay, so let's put some quick facts out there. So you vaccinated, you can spread the virus, but your viral load is not higher than someone who's unvaccinated. So that was a myth that has been corrected. We actually found, and actually the CDC director just posted out the information. Those who are unvaccinated are 21 more times likelier to pass the virus and spread the virus to others. So the risk is in the unvaccinated. That doesn't mean that the vaccinated can't have some virus, especially the Delta variant. We found this, especially with the Delta variant, so they can spread it. That is true. So that's why they're saying everybody mask, right? The risk with regards to the family, as you mentioned, children, which are important. Children are getting caught in the crosshairs. Pretty much it is masking. That's the only option we really have, hand washing and social distancing as best as we can do. But when you're in the family, that's why people around the kids need to be vaccinated, need to be protected as best so they won't shed or spread as much virus since they won't have as much of the viral load. But compared to the unvaccinated, that's a big difference. The unvaccinated definitely more likely going to spread it to their kids. And that's the concern. Same thing with the school system. And make sure they're washing their hands and the staff that are around them are vaccinated. They're wearing their masks. And the teens that are around them, 12 to 16, they can get the vaccine. They should be getting that. And until we get some approval, they're doing the studies literally in the ages 2 to 5 and 5 to 11 right now, so they can be approved for the vaccine. They just have to make sure the right dose and safety is appropriate for them.
Okay. And I guess the final part of it, when the Johnson and Johnson stuff happened, and there were some, I think, some instances where there were, correct me if I'm wrong, I think like blood clots or allergic reactions and so forth and so forth. So when the Johnson and Johnson happened, uh, pretty much fairly early on in the process of vaccination,
Yep.
it also kind of deters some people from, oh hell no, especially Black people, like, oh hell no, man, like they can't get baby powder right, so I ain't gonna get the vaccine right. Uh, with all of that as well, your Johnson and Johnson, which a lot of people are straying away from, your Moderna, which, if I'm not mistaken, I think an African American lady was also a part of the part of creating the science for Moderna.
Sure, yes. Dr.
Yeah.
Kizzy Correct, good
Right.
friend and colleague. Yep.
And then, so the Pfizer, as we do this conversation, you all don't jump down my throat, but as we do this conversation right now, the Pfizer is fully FDA approved.
Correct.
With what we imagine the Moderna right behind it, right?
Correct.
Do you think that all of the vaccinations being fully FDA approved will put more of the population at ease? And if not, what do you think is going to take to put the population, namely the urban community, African American community, or anybody that doesn't want to get vaccinated, at ease?
So, real talk, let me give you some stats. So, Kaiser Family Foundation did a study, and basically it showed that out of the group of people who weren't going to get vaccinated in general, 30% or a third of them said if it was FDA approved, final approval, they would get the vaccine.
Right, right.
For whatever it's worth. For our community and how I've been having the dialogue, I think people already set in their minds, for the most part, where they want to stand. So people already dug in their heels. Even if it's FDA approved, it may move the needle a little bit, so to speak, no pun intended. However, it's the organizations, the corporations, the businesses, the fun activities, the live nations, the whoever's concert and movie studios, all of the corporations are going to be the ones to actually make the change because they're going to make it mandatory. And that's the only way we're going to get to move anything. I'm not saying that it's right or wrong, but that's the only way that's going to change. Because when you start hitting people in their wallet, on their bread, you playing with their bread, people going to sit up. They're going to have to make the decision, and that's what's going to happen, unfortunately.
Let me ask you this. I think that when I see where everything is going, mandatory vaccines, some people, I think New York in the healthcare system, they said, we're not even dealing with the test because it's too tricky. We want the vaccines. But let me just ask you, if you had a friend, right, and your friend didn't trust you because you might have slipped up and you might have made some type of mistake, right? Is it better to try to gain the trust back of the friend for long term in the relationship, or is it better to try to kind of, I don't want to say they're manipulating because I feel like I get it. There's lives at stake. You know what I'm saying? There's compromised people at stake. But I just think that the same way that there's a lot of money put into promoting the vaccine and telling people that it's safe and so forth, I feel like there needs to be a certain amount of finance or budget put towards just repairing trust. You understand what I'm saying? Because forbid we have COVID-22 and have to go through this all again, which is not far beyond science from what I hear. Not claiming it, we don't want that. But this might not be the worst of the worst. Like, viruses are here to stay. There will be more viruses, hopefully never as treacherous as this one. But I just feel like, shouldn't there be some funding towards just repairing the trust between the government? And I'm not even going to get into the deep political of police officers and Black people and so forth. But I just feel like, if I had my say so and I could raise my hand in class, I would say, shouldn't we be putting some type of money towards repairing the trust issues? You know what I'm saying? I just think that would help on several different levels moving forward.
I think it would. I totally do, and I agree with you totally. But the whole system is all jacked up. Even the healthcare, the medical system. You know, the interesting part, a story that's really not told is, and Black doctors get caught in this. We all are. It's like we shadow boxing, and we got one hand behind our back. One, we trying to look out for the community, but yet then we getting pushback from the community. And then within the system that we work, the healthcare system, we deal with racism and all the social injustice issues within the system. So we're fighting the system. We trying to get our people, and we pretty much sometimes fighting our people to say, like, nah, for real. This time is real. Like, come get it. Forget about the, at least temporarily for now. Just let's make it so we can be survive, and then we can address those issues. I think some people want us to address those issues while people are dying, and that's not going to work. It just doesn't make sense. Save the lives. Just like stop the bleeding first. That's what we're trained. Okay, I'm a trauma doc, so I got to stop the bleeding on the gunshot wound. Put the pressure on there first. Make sure their airway and breathing and circulation, they at least are going to survive. They're alive. I stop all that, and then we start to address all the other issues. So I totally agree. The repairing of that relationship and that trust, very important. Needs to be a part of the solution. And they're trying to do some of those things, but literally it's our population who's reaching out to our population and our people. But they also have to listen to us, and they have to know who they're listening to. Not every doctor is a doctor is one of the things I say. I swear on several platforms, everybody's a doctor and an expert. Just because they passed their 12th grade biology class and copied off of their friend, they think they're experts. Real talk. I don't go to a mechanic and tell them, hey, the carburetor needs to be done. I might have looked it up, but I'm not an expert. I'm gonna give you your props and give us our props, and understand that we not part of the system. We get it because we're fighting the system within the system, but we're also looking out for our people and trying to get that done. So we shadow boxing. We're stuck in between like a sandwich.
Okay. No doubt, man. Dr. Dan, man, I appreciate your time. I always appreciate you know what I'm saying, being educated. And again, a lot of these questions are coming from the people that I just interact with. I've got family members. You can imagine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? But I think we'll all get through this together. Let's respect one another. You know what I'm saying? Let's not politicize a pandemic. You know what I'm saying? When that first started happening, I felt like it was dangerous. Let's not politicize mass. Of course, everybody should have free will and the free will to do as they please. You know what I mean? But let's not politicize it. And furthermore, let's not use it to pull us further apart. You know what I mean? That's just a message from DJ Scream.
But I'm with you. Appreciate it, boss.
Absolutely. Salute. Appreciate it.
All right.